take a deep breath with me for a moment, because what I'm about to explain is not gossip, not internet noise, and not something that can be brushed aside with time. These are real court documents, real judicial decisions, and real consequences, and for Sean Diddy Combs, the situation has officially taken a very serious turn. Lawsuit updates have just come in, and where many people expected these cases to be dismissed and quietly fade away, that simply did not happen. Instead, the court stepped in and said no, this is moving forward. And when a judge makes that decision, especially years after a case was filed, it means the claims are serious enough to be examined, evidence is substantial enough to be considered, and the legal danger is very real. This is not good news for Diddy, and anyone watching closely understands exactly why. This particular update centers around the case of Lisa Gardner versus Sean Combs and singer Aaron Hall, a lawsuit that has haunted Diddy since it emerged in the aftermath of Cassie's explosive filing back in November of 2023. We are now in 2026, and the fact that this case is still alive alone speaks volumes. Lisa Gardner accused both men of a violent sexual assault, allegations so severe that they immediately placed this lawsuit in a category courts do not take lightly. What makes this update critical is the judge's ruling. Judge Gordon has now reviewed the motions to dismiss and issued his decision. Some claims were thrown out, yes, but the most important ones, the claims that matter most, survived. The court dismissed the Mann Act claim and also dismissed claims related to intentional and negligent infliction of emotional distress. However, and this is the key point everyone needs to understand, the judge allowed the assault and battery claims against Diddy to move forward. That means this lawsuit is not over, not stalled, and not dead. It is alive, active, and advancing through the legal system. For those who have lived long enough to understand how courts usually operate, this decision should stop you in your tracks. Judges routinely dismiss civil cases like this early if they believe there is insufficient legal grounding or credible substance. That did not happen here. Instead, the court effectively said there is enough here to proceed. That alone is a serious red flag for Diddy. And it gets worse. Universal Music Group, which was also named in the lawsuit, has officially been dismissed from the case. UMG wanted out, and the judge granted them that exit. Diddy, however, was not given the same relief. What that means in simple terms is that Lisa Gardner is now coming directly for him, and him alone. There is no corporate shield left, no shared responsibility, and no distraction. He is now the sole target, standing alone in a case involving allegations of physical violence. Because these assault and battery claims survived, the case now moves into discovery, and discovery is where things get dangerous for anyone with something to hide. This phase allows both sides to demand evidence: text messages, emails, phone records, photographs, videos, medical records, security logs, and witness testimony. Depositions will be taken, questions will be asked under oath, and information that was once private can become public. Discovery is messy, expensive, emotionally draining, and often revealing, and it is the stage where many high-profile defendants decide to settle because once this door opens, it cannot be closed. This is why this update matters. This is why this is bad news for Diddy. The case did not collapse. It did not disappear with time. Instead, it has survived, advanced, and narrowed its focus squarely onto him, and that is a legal position no one wants to be in, especially when the accusations involve violence and the clock has not made them go away. What makes this situation even more disturbing is the shadow hanging over the second defendant in this case, Aaron Hall, because as of now, he is effectively missing. No confirmed location, no public appearances, no statements, and no clarity on where he has gone since this lawsuit was filed. For anyone who has followed high-profile civil cases over the decades, this kind of disappearance is deeply unusual and raises serious questions. When allegations of this magnitude are placed before a court, and one of the accused seemingly vanishes, it does not inspire confidence, it does not calm public concern, and it certainly does not help the defense. Instead, it adds another layer of unease, another unanswered question in a case already filled with them. Courts notice this behavior, and so do juries. Silence and absence do not make accusations disappear. They often make them feel heavier. This case also did not emerge in isolation. It arrived in a moment when the public had already been forced to re-examine long-standing power structures in the music industry, especially after Cassie's lawsuit cracked open a door many believed had been sealed shut for decades. That filing in late 2023 changed the atmosphere entirely. It shifted the legal climate from skepticism to scrutiny. Once that door opened, other plaintiffs found the courage to step forward, and suddenly stories that had been whispered about behind closed doors were now being placed into sworn court filings. Lisa Gardner's case was one of those, and the timing matters. Courts are not blind to patterns. When multiple lawsuits describe similar behaviors, similar environments, and similar abuses of power, judges look more carefully, not less. This is one reason why the survival of these assault and battery claims carries such weight. It signals that the court believes there is enough here to justify deeper examination, not dismissal. Now that the case has entered discovery, the process itself becomes its own form of pressure. Discovery is not simply paperwork. It is a deep excavation of someone's personal and professional life. Every phone call, every message, every interaction that can be tied to the timeline of the alleged events becomes fair game. For a public figure like Diddy, whose life has been surrounded by staff, security teams, assistants, and industry insiders for decades, discovery can widen quickly. Witness lists grow. People who once stayed silent may now be subpoenaed and compelled to speak under oath. Medical records, travel records, hotel logs, and security footage can all come into play. This is not about storytelling anymore. This is about evidence, and evidence has a way of surfacing truths that public relations teams cannot spin away. Another critical point here is that cases involving alleged physical violence rarely die quietly. When claims of assault and battery survive a motion to dismiss, they gain a different legal gravity. These are not abstract accusations about hurt feelings or damaged reputations. These are claims about bodily harm, consent, and power. Jurors, especially older jurors with life experience, tend to take such claims seriously because they understand what violence means, what trauma does over time, and how difficult it can be for victims to come forward, particularly when the accused holds enormous wealth and influence. That reality alone increases the risk for a defendant, because once a jury hears these stories, control over the outcome shifts dramatically. Financially, the pressure also intensifies. Discovery is expensive, and prolonged litigation drains resources at a rapid pace. Legal teams bill by the hour, experts are hired, and settlements are negotiated behind closed doors. This is why civil lawsuits can be just as damaging as criminal cases, if not more so. They do not require proof beyond a reasonable doubt, and they strike directly at assets. Money, property, and future earnings all come into focus. This context makes recent reports about Diddy selling assets and seeking liquidity feel less coincidental and more strategic. When multiple civil cases are active at once, the financial strain becomes cumulative, and decisions that once seemed unthinkable suddenly become necessary. Beyond the Lisa Gardner case, there is also movement in another lawsuit that cannot be ignored, the Anna Cain case. This is a separate matter entirely, but it follows a similar pattern of persistence rather than collapse. The court has now entered a protective order governing discovery in that case, a procedural step that signals the exchange of sensitive and confidential information is about to intensify. Protective orders exist to control how evidence is handled, who can see it, and how it can be used, which tells us the court anticipates material that could be damaging, personal, or explosive. This is not the behavior of a case heading toward dismissal. It is the behavior of a case moving forward methodically. One line in the court filing stands out as particularly significant. Partial discovery regarding the identity of a previously unnamed third assailant is due by January 30th. That date matters. It means there is another individual whose name has not yet been publicly revealed, someone whose identity the plaintiff is actively seeking through the court. The existence of a third person adds another layer of seriousness and complexity. It suggests that the alleged events did not occur in isolation and that the circle of accountability may widen. Courts do not authorize discovery into unnamed individuals without cause. There must be a legal basis, a credible reason to believe that person's identity is relevant to the claims being made. The emotional weight of this moment should not be overlooked, especially for viewers who have seen similar reckonings unfold over decades in politics, religion, entertainment, and business. Time does not erase wrongdoing, it only delays accountability. Many older viewers understand this deeply because they have watched powerful figures evade consequences for years, only to face them later when the silence finally breaks. These cases remind us that justice moves slowly, but it does move. Every procedural step, every denied motion to dismiss, and every discovery deadline is another inch forward. What also complicates matters is the public commentary swirling around these lawsuits. When figures in the entertainment industry step forward to highlight moments where Diddy may have helped someone or acted heroically, it creates a deeply uncomfortable contrast. Two things can be true at the same time. A person can have done something kind in one moment and something deeply harmful in another. But emphasizing alleged heroism while multiple victims are seeking accountability in court often feels dismissive, especially to those who understand trauma and its lifelong impact. For many older viewers, this kind of narrative deflection feels familiar because they have seen it used repeatedly to excuse powerful men from facing hard truths. At this stage, the legal reality is unavoidable. These lawsuits are not fading into the background. They are advancing. Deadlines are being set. Evidence is being demanded. And the longer this continues, the more pressure builds. Settlement becomes more likely as exposure increases, but if settlement is refused, the path leads toward trial, where a jury will decide whether assault and battery occurred and what damages, if any, should be awarded. That is a risk no defendant takes lightly, particularly when multiple cases are unfolding at once. For now, the most important takeaway is this: the legal system has not turned away from these claims. It has leaned in. The courts are preparing for deeper examination, not dismissal. And for Sean Diddy Combs, this means the past is not staying buried. It is being pulled piece by piece into the light. What makes this phase especially dangerous for Diddy is that once discovery begins in earnest, control is no longer in his hands, and that is something powerful people are rarely prepared for. For decades, influence, money, and connections can delay consequences, soften narratives, and intimidate silence. But discovery does not respond to power the way public opinion does. It responds to documents, sworn testimony, timelines, and evidence that either exists or does not. Every assistant, every security guard, every driver, every employee who was present during the years in question becomes a potential witness. People who once felt loyalty, fear, or dependence may now find themselves legally obligated to tell the truth under oath. And for viewers who have lived long lives and seen how secrets unravel, you know exactly how fast things can change once people are no longer allowed to stay silent. Another reality that cannot be ignored is how these civil cases interact with Diddy's current incarceration. Being behind bars does not pause civil litigation. It does not slow deadlines. It does not stop discovery. In fact, it can make everything harder. Legal coordination becomes more complicated, communication with attorneys is restricted, and strategic decision-making becomes slower and more reactive. Meanwhile, plaintiffs continue to push forward. Courts do not wait for a defendant's comfort. They move according to procedure and schedule. This means Diddy is facing the enormous stress of criminal confinement while simultaneously fighting multiple civil lawsuits that demand time, money, and attention. That kind of pressure breaks people emotionally and financially, and history shows it often leads to rushed decisions and costly mistakes. There is also a deeper psychological toll at play here, one that is rarely discussed but deeply felt. When lawsuits linger for years, they do not simply exist on paper. They hang over families, reputations, and legacies. Children grow older, parents age, and the weight of unresolved accusations becomes heavier, not lighter. For an older audience, this is especially resonant because you understand the value of peace in later years and how devastating it is to live under constant legal threat. These cases are not just about money. They are about what history will say, what names will be remembered for, and whether accountability will ever be acknowledged. The financial implications continue to escalate as well. Legal defense in multiple active civil cases is extraordinarily expensive, and the costs do not stop at attorney fees. Expert witnesses, forensic analysts, private investigators, and court filings add up quickly. This is why civil exposure can be more dangerous than criminal charges in some situations. Criminal cases are handled by the state, but civil cases strike directly at personal wealth. They force defendants to liquidate assets, sell property, and restructure finances in ways that can permanently alter their standing. Reports of jets being sold, homes being taken off the market, and aggressive cash preservation strategies suddenly make sense in this context. These are not random financial moves. They are defensive maneuvers in anticipation of long-term legal warfare. Another element that adds gravity is the pattern emerging across these lawsuits. Each case may be separate, but together they paint a broader picture that courts cannot ignore. Similar allegations, similar timeframes, similar power dynamics, these patterns matter. Judges are trained to be cautious, but they are also trained to recognize when repeated claims suggest something systemic rather than isolated. That is why these cases continue to survive early dismissal. It is not because of public pressure. It is because the legal thresholds are being met. Evidence exists, claims are coherent, and the allegations fall within actionable legal frameworks. That reality should concern anyone paying attention. The role of public commentary continues to complicate things. When celebrities or industry insiders speak out to defend character or highlight positive moments from the past, it often backfires. Courts do not weigh popularity or anecdotal kindness, they weigh facts. And to many observers, especially older viewers with decades of lived experience, these defenses sound familiar and hollow. They echo past scandals where reputations were protected at the expense of victims, and history has shown how those stories end. Public sympathy can shift quickly when evidence is presented, and those who spoke too soon often find themselves retreating into silence. What also cannot be overlooked is the emotional endurance of the plaintiffs. Civil litigation is grueling, especially for individuals who are not wealthy or powerful. Coming forward means reliving trauma, facing scrutiny, and enduring years of uncertainty. The fact that these plaintiffs are still pushing forward years later, through motions, delays, and public skepticism, carries its own weight. It suggests determination, not opportunism. Courts recognize this persistence, and juries often do as well. Older jurors, in particular, understand what it means to carry pain quietly for years before finally speaking. As deadlines approach and discovery expands, the likelihood of settlement grows, but settlement itself carries consequences. It may end a case legally, but it does not erase public memory. It does not undo years of scrutiny or restore reputations to their former state. And if settlement is refused, the road leads toward trial, where narratives are no longer controlled by press releases or interviews. They are shaped by testimony, cross-examination, and evidence presented in open court. That is a gamble few defendants win when multiple plaintiffs are involved. At this stage, the message from the legal system is unmistakable. These cases are not stalling. They're progressing. Protective orders are in place, discovery deadlines are set, and the machinery of accountability is moving forward. For Diddy, this means the past is no longer something that can be managed quietly behind closed doors. It is being examined in full view of the law, and the longer this continues, the fewer exits remain. This is not a momentary storm. It is a reckoning unfolding step by step, and there is no clear escape from what comes next. At this point, it becomes impossible to ignore the larger picture, because what we are witnessing is not just a series of legal filings, but the slow unraveling of a narrative that once felt untouchable. For decades, Sean Diddy Combs existed in a space where success, wealth, and influence insulated him from consequences, where rumors stayed rumors and accusations were quietly buried by time, fear, or silence. But the legal system does not operate on nostalgia or reputation, and it does not stop moving simply because someone was once admired. These lawsuits, still active and still advancing, represent something far deeper than headlines. They represent accountability finally knocking on a door that stayed closed for far too long. What makes this moment especially heavy is the timing. These cases are not emerging in the early rise of a career, when mistakes can be dismissed as immaturity or chaos. They are surfacing at a stage in life when legacy matters, when history is being written, and when there is very little room left to hide from the truth. For many older viewers, this resonates deeply because you understand how quickly the final chapters of a life can define everything that came before. Achievements fade. Awards gather dust. What remains is how a person treated others when they had power, and whether they ever took responsibility for the harm they caused. The advice many legal experts quietly agree on is simple, even if it is difficult to accept. Settlement may be the least damaging option. Not because settlement admits guilt in a moral sense, but because prolonged litigation exposes everything. Discovery does not care about dignity. Trials do not protect privacy. And juries do not respond well to defendants who appear dismissive, combative, or unwilling to acknowledge pain. Every additional day these cases remain open increases the risk of reputational damage that cannot be undone, regardless of the legal outcome. Even a technical win, after years of public scrutiny, can still feel like a loss. There is also the reality of age, time, and endurance. Legal battles consume energy, clarity, and emotional stability. Fighting multiple civil cases simultaneously while incarcerated is not a position of strength. It is a position of survival. Decisions made under that kind of pressure are rarely wise, and history is filled with examples of powerful men who misjudged their ability to outlast the system. The courts do not tire. Plaintiffs do not simply disappear. And public interest does not fade when new evidence continues to surface. What stands out most in all of this is that these lawsuits refuse to go away. They have survived motions to dismiss. They have entered discovery. Protective orders are in place. Deadlines are approaching. Mystery individuals are being identified. This is not stagnation. This is momentum. Each procedural step may seem small on its own, but together they form a path that leads toward resolution, whether through settlement or trial. And along that path, truths have a way of emerging, even when they have been suppressed for years. For the alleged victims, this process is not about headlines or revenge. It is about being heard after silence. For those watching who are 65 and older, this likely feels familiar, because you have seen institutions protect powerful figures while ordinary people carried pain quietly. You have seen how long it can take for justice to even begin, and how exhausting it is for those who seek it. These cases are reminders that speaking up often comes at great personal cost, and that courage does not always look loud or immediate. Sometimes it looks like persistence over years. As for Diddy, the message from the courts is unmistakable. Time is no longer on his side. These civil lawsuits are not minor distractions. They are serious threats that demand resolution. Money is being drained. Reputations are eroding. Options are narrowing. And no matter how this ends, the image that once existed has already been permanently altered. This is what happens when power meets accountability and cannot push it away. So as we watch these cases continue to unfold, it is important to remember why they matter. Not because of celebrity, but because they test whether the legal system applies equally to everyone, regardless of fame or fortune. They remind us that lawsuits do not expire just because the public gets distracted, and that justice, however slow, does not forget. This is not just bad news for Diddy. It is a sobering moment for an industry, a culture, and a generation that is being forced to confront truths it avoided for far too long.